Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a social justice, a social justice phenomenon, which is called being invisible, made invisible, being invisible. And the argument is, and it seems to be getting traction around the colleges and the NGO social justice type activist class, that minorities have been made invisible. Now, that invisibility has been brought about, as you can imagine, or they're alleging at least, by those damn fucking fascist, fucking Nazi, fucking white supremacist Hitlers. They're the ones that did it. And they've claimed all the limelight for themselves and made every minority, be it white women or non-white people, gay people, it's made them invisible. So they're claiming that all these people have been made invisible, that you only see a history of straight white males because, again, evil, wicked, white supremacist, Nazi, yada, yada, yada. And that this must be, something must be done about it. Now, the remedy, as these people see it, is that that you make invisible straight white males, as in punishment for what's gone on in the past, and you artificially make prominent the minority people, and that complete reversal of reality will create equity or something like that. They don't appear to have a particularly cogent argument. They just say, well, it's terrible what happened. If we do the opposite of what was going on before, or create the opposite outcome through artificial means, then justice, social justice, equity will be achieved. So it's a pretty sort of fucked up piece of logic. But this is the path they're going down. So they're insisting that all white achievements, white male achievements, whether it's Louis Pasteur discovering germs, or whether it's Gustav Eiffel and the engineering marvel of the Eiffel Tower, or Edison and the light. It doesn't matter. Any white accomplishment, white achievement in any, the invention of the spinning jenny, any of that at all never was really legitimate. And the reason it's not legitimate is because minorities were being invisible. That's the argument. So this is pretty much a central part of why they're saying all white history is illegitimate, because, and they're very actively wanting to delegitimize it, it's all illegitimate because the minorities were invisible. So anyway, let's have a look at this and see where we go. Now, they're attacking this, and they're saying that all the accomplishments and achievements, medical, scientific, whatever, that were achieved by white men, they're trying to attack it and say, well, those straight white men, a lot of them were really gay, or really it was their one-legged lesbian black servant or maid that really did the work, and it was just Charles Darwin, really his wife did everything, and he was just some flunky that carried her books. Or Charles Darwin once had for a few weeks had some black assistant somewhere working as some sort of flunky in a university, and it was really that black guy that did all the work. So they're trying to undermine it in that way, saying, well, these white accomplishments, it wasn't really the white guys that did it. It was their black lesbian servant. She was the one that actually made the scientific breakthrough and discovery. But she was illiterate and has never been. It doesn't matter. She did it because that evil far right fascist Nazi. We can't allow them to have these achievements, because then that legitimizes their status, and we have to work and do everything we can to delegitimize them. And so let's just say that the black lesbian servant did it. So they're coming at it from that direction. That's one of them. And also they're coming out from the point of view, well, if everybody was equal back in those days, then 50% of all these inventions would have been discovered by black lesbians or brought about by black lesbians. So it's only because of the gross inequality that means that white men were, straight white men were making these scientific breakthroughs and inventing this, that, and the next thing, because they had no one-legged black lesbians to compete against. And if they had, then the one-legged black lesbians would, of course, got 50% of the country. So they're trying it from that direction. But they're arguing that it was black people, or minorities generally, were artificially held back, artificially held down, prevented from doing these things, and and so on. Now, is any of this true, though? It spins a good narrative, the dark Marxist narrative, oppression, and the us and them, and the exploiters and the exploited. It runs that narrative, which is a very simple narrative that simple people can follow on. But it doesn't stack up. Why was it that in countries with 99.9% white populations did all the modern inventions come from? Now, there was a few, outside of that, but gee, not very many. So pretty much all the modern everything that you see around you, from the internet to the mobile phone to the combustion engine to the, electrical engines to whatever. It doesn't matter where you look. It's straight white men invented it in the most advanced scientific societies. The most advanced scientific societies were white societies because they embraced the Enlightenment and scientific inquiry. Those areas of the world that didn't embrace those things didn't have those inventions. So there's no rocket science issue here. The most advanced scientific and technical countries that were 99.9% white produced all these inventions. So the idea that black people are being held back or this or that doesn't fly. That's just ridiculous. There weren't the black people there. Now they could argue, well, there should have been black people there in 1750 or 1790 when the spinning jenny this and the steam pump that. Or something. Why should there have been? Well, I don't know. Just should have been. And so that doesn't fly. So they could argue that, well, women would have, white women would have produced 50%, or white lesbians would have produced 50% of the inventions. That doesn't, stack up either. Men have always been mathematically and technically, making things work. And how do they work? Let's have a look. Have always been inclined that way, even before the Industrial Revolution. You look at the water wheels and the windmills used for grinding grain, and any technical invention, even going back to the Roman times, inventing concrete, and the list goes on. Archimedes and all these sort of people. It was always men that were having those inventions. Again, even in pre-industrial societies, you'd be hard pressed to find any invention by women, even in places where there was no such thing as a patriarchy as we would understand it in propaganda terms today. So that doesn't fly either. Could there have been some inventions by women? Well, sure, there could have been. A woman invented liquid paper, for example. So it doesn't mean that it can't happen. But would it have been 1% even of the inventions? But the maximum, it would have been that. So, and the woman who invented liquid paper is revered and is recognised for that accomplishment, even though she did so at a time when the patriarchy was still supposedly dominant. And she had no problem, again, being recognised and revered for that. Now, the second part of this is that, and this is really the super ominous part, is to delegitimize, or this comes in two parts really, delegitimize the accomplishments of straight white men. So, well, the reason there aren't black lesbians doing all these inventions is because of some terrible evil. The outcomes are not equal, therefore some evil is at play. That evil must be fascist, Nazi, Hitler, far right, China, patriarchy, So that's just a pure invention. That those sort of things. That so they then have to respond and say, we must therefore delegitimize all these white inventions because if we accept those wide inventions and those wide accomplishments, wide achievements, that automatically has the effect of, as they said, invisibling, making invisible everyone else other than straight white males. So to reverse this, which must be reversed for reasons, why must it actually be reversed? Can anyone explain that? Hey, let's not worry about details. Equity, equity, equity. They had to delegitimize the wide accomplishments and say that they're really all those guys that did it were gay, and Charles Dickens was gay, and everybody was gay, or really they were black, or that has to be done, or black people really invented all these things, evil, whitey stole it. So they go through all that and then insist that there must be reversed. So we have to make sure that today white people are simply not mentioned. We have to just make sure that they receive no kudos for whatever they invent or achieve, and we must actively prevent them from achieving and producing and creating and inventing and innovating, and so that only black lesbian inventions get any sort of media coverage and reviewed. So that will then reverse the centuries of evil, fascist, far-right, Nazi discrimination against minorities and so on. So their proposed remedy. Now, let's suppose I'm sitting, or a sensible person sitting in the chair, assuming I'm sensible, is saying, okay, how do we address, assuming it needs to be addressed? It doesn't. Those people invented the spinning jenny and the light bulb and the whatever. Those people invented it. Fine, they invented it. It's a great invention. It advanced the cause of human civilization and made life easier. Well, why not celebrate it? It doesn't matter who the fuck invented it. And of course, the most advanced technical and scientific societies that just happen to be 99.9% well, of course they're the ones that are going to come up with those inventions. What do you think the people living in the mud hut in the middle of Africa with their voodoo and witch doctor, you think they're going to invent these advanced scientific things? They don't even understand metal, or it's insane to think that they were being held back or prevented. Nothing of the sort was occurring. Stone Age societies are not going to invent modern technology. They're just not going to do it. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong or bad, but they want to delegitimize that. But my feeling would be, if you want to have minority inventors, the proverbial black lesbian and that sort of thing, then give them access to, open up an advanced technology university in fucking Africa or somewhere, and then say, okay, it's free for anybody who wants to come, and stack it with well-paid, competent lecturers and professors and so on, and it's free for anybody who wants to come, and go from there. It's okay, the people that want to have that education, we're making it available to you. And then those who've got the brains and the inclination and the motivation and all those sorts of things, they would come along and receive that education. Maybe they would invent the cure for cancer. Who knows? It's unlikely, so I don't see as people being denied opportunity. Their societies just weren't that developed. Capitalism was important, property ownership, patents. There was a whole lot of social organizational structure that also went into these inventions. Now let's come to just white women in the white coat. This is the advanced scientific, and say, well, they were denied. Again, I don't buy that. That just doesn't stand up to any scrutiny. When you look at sort of when universal education was starting to become a thing, say in Britain as an example, the education authorities wanted to bring girls into the education system, and even in the 1800s in Britain, they realised that if they made the education for girls rigorous, the girls would drop out. They just wouldn't want to do it. It was too hard. They also realised if they gave girls tests to test their knowledge on a pass or fail basis, girls would want to drop out. They'd rather quit school than have a test on what they know. Boys didn't worry about that, or in general, I'm sure some didn't like it, but boys and you didn't worry about it. It was expected that boys must be tested rigorously, whereas girls, and there are other things. You're allowed to cane a boy with a stick six times in a day, but a girl only once, and these sorts of things. So there was various measures in the education department that were clearly stated. You must not test or expect the same outcome from girls. You cannot rigorously educate them, otherwise they'll just drop out. And it's more preferable that they stay and at least come out the other end, with literate and competent. Now, obviously, there were some women that obviously studied their English lessons very hard, and they wrote children's novels and children's stories, and Harriet Beecher Stowe in the United States. So women were around and doing okay in school. If you look at the Louisa May Alcott, Little Women, and things like that, that demonstrated, I think, that girls were attending school, at least enough school that they could come out the other end decently literate, and also aware of, say, another language. Often they learned another language, like, I don't know, French or whatever. But so this idea that women were being held back or denied places was nonsense. Now, I spoke to activists. This is like 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, who were arguing that they switched their argument. So women weren't being held back necessarily. They were just they weren't being encouraged enough to do it. And so the encouragements, and again, this is feminist activism, the encouragements had to be to give affirmative action jobs, affirmative action degrees, affirmative action PhDs, that would solve it. Because when you look at a bit of paper, there are 0 women with science PhDs. So you just give out a whole bunch of affirmative action PhDs. And then the next year you can say, well, there are an equal number of male and female PhDs. Problem solved. That's it. Equity. We've got an equal society. But we don't, because none of those women earned those degrees, where all of the men did. And that's a problem we see today in engineering. And I've interviewed candidates for jobs for engineering, and the men are all obviously passed their tests and met the criteria, all the white men, that is. Whereas every single fucking woman, not one of them, all of them got an affirmative action engineering degree, all of them, certainly the ones I interviewed, and all of the men did rigorously pass. I mean, you wouldn't want any of those women designing the bridge, let me tell you that. Not only that they got the affirmative action degrees, they didn't give a shit. They didn't see why they should be rigorously tested. And when they got basic sort of questions, about volumetric calculations, things like that, they would just shrug and say, I can look that up on the internet. Why do I need to know? But you've got a degree that says you do know. So what? I can look it up on the internet. I don't need to know any of that. Why are you asking me those questions? You damn fascist Nazi patriarchy. Well, they didn't say that, but they were put out by receiving the question. You're asking me questions I can't answer. That makes me feel bad. And because I feel bad, that means you're a member of the oppressive patriarchy because you're making me feel. No. This is a job interview. You're being asked about your knowledge of engineering. You have a bit of paper that says you have passed the test and you are a qualified civil engineer. I'm asking you a basic civil engineering question and you don't know the answer. What's that got to do with patriarchy? But it makes me feel bad, and so on. So it doesn't work giving these affirmative action degrees. But on this whole matter of being invisible, the argument is, and it really is getting traction in a lot of places, we see it all over the cultural institutions in the West, denigrate and delegitimize all white male accomplishments and artificially invent minority accomplishments. And if the minorities have no accomplishments, just invent one, dream one up. No media or group or politician will point it out. You can tell any lies you want and you will not be challenged on it. So being invisible, it's a thing. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.